I'd like to give a big shout out to the HOODOO Gurus, who have given us permission to use part of their song, That's My Team, as our new podcast episode intro for all of their music. And whenever they are going live or performing live, head to their Facebook and their Instagram. The links will be in the description below. Be sure to give them a like and a follow as well on Facebook and Instagram. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Final Tackle podcast, and I'm CJ, and we're joined today by current Rabbitohs prop, powerhouse really. He's a big forward. He's 6'4". His name is Mark Nicholls. Thanks very much for joining us here today, mate.
Thanks for having me. I think powerhouse is a bit generous.
Well, I mean, you're a big bloke, as in standing at 6'4", 104 kilos, and managing to top the whole squad and coming third in the cardio test. Can you tell us about that and how you managed to, like, being such a tall bloke, you know, and being a prop? How do you keep up the cardio and the fitness level?
Yeah, I've sort of always been a pretty fit bloke, I guess.
Yep.
Early on, as a young guy coming through, I realised I probably wasn't as quick and powerful as other guys, and I definitely wasn't as strong as a lot of guys in the gym. And fitness was sort of one of the things I was always good at, so it was always my strength. So I guess I've always tried to make sure it's something that I keep strong, and make sure that that's the thing that puts me ahead of other guys.
When it comes to selection time and whatnot. I'm obviously not gonna be as strong as powerful as a bloke like Tom Burgess or Junior Totola, but if I'm fit, then that's something that I might have. Like you've got the endurance to play all the 80 sort of thing.
Yeah. So, but this year I actually benefited. I had my shoulder done in the off season, so I was doing a lot of running on the side. Which when we came back, I think it was in January, we came back and tested, and I sort of, I think one of the young halfbacks, I think it might have been Blake Taff and it might have been Dean Hawkins and Dane Gagai topped the backs, and then me and Damien Cook topped the forwards.
Oh wow!
Sort of surprised a few of the
strength and heads,
stuff, but it was probably because all I'd been doing before Christmas was running, because that's all I could do. So
no, that's fair enough. Sorry, continue.
Yeah.
No, honestly, that's good stuff. Actually, by the way, that one was one of the questions by beloved Manly. Fuck, why am I talking about Manly? Sorry, beloved Rabbitohs Burrow member Damo Batty. He also wants to ask, did you find it difficult to break into first grade, given that A, you're a bit of a late bloomer, getting your debut around 23 years old or 25 years old, and coming from country, rural, did you find it may have been a bit easier if you'd have been a city boy?
Well, I grew up in the country, but I left with my family. We moved from Leeton to Canberra when I was 14.
Oh, okay.
So it was probably good timing, because I tried out for ACT schoolboys under 15s the first year we were in Canberra, and then sort of from there the Raiders every year identify some guys that they want to come and try out for their Harold Mats squad at the end of that year, obviously going into under 16s the following season. So from there, they sort of said, "Oh, look, we'd love you to come try out," and got picked, and that's where my sort of football career started, coming through the grades at Canberra.
Yep, going through Harold Mats and under 21s and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So I sort of played Harold Mats, SG Ball, 20s, a couple of years of reserve grade, and then I debuted at 22.
Oh, okay, 22. Sorry, yep.
Under Dave Fernell was the coach back then. And then sort of spent more than a few years actually on the fringe, trying to establish myself as a first grade footballer, and sort of played a handful of games here or there, but mostly reserve grade. And then probably wasn't until I came to South that I was able to establish myself as a first grader. So like I said, it's probably probably fortunate. We actually moved. My sister was a really good swimmer, and
Oh, wow.
Growing up in a country area, there's obviously not heated pools in winter, and
No,
my sister's
I can relate to that.
yeah, my sister's a couple of years younger than me, and Mum and Dad sort of made a decision that for her the best thing would be to move to a bigger area, and Dad was pretty adamant that he didn't want to move to the big smoke, so
Like Sydney and all that.
yeah. So most people, sort of pay out Canberra for being a big country town, but when we first went to Leeton, I thought, oh, this place is massive,
Oh, wow.
They got KFCs everywhere, and
Yeah.
But then I, growing up, I was adamant that I'd never live in Sydney. As a kid, I sort of was like, come to Sydney for sport and stuff, and it just seemed so big. But as footy has given me opportunities, sort of now to go live in Melbourne for a couple of years, and now come to Sydney, and we've sort of my wife now, and just had a little bub, so we've settled into Sydney life. Yeah, thanks, mate. We're sort of in the inner west, and we sort of love it here. So it's funny how life turns out.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's funny how it pans out. Now, obviously, given the things that are going on in the NRL at the moment with the COVID restart and all that, how was your routine, and was it thrown off in general during the COVID crisis? Obviously, you mentioned you were doing your running in December, getting ready for a preseason, the nines, all that jazz, and then obviously, for lack of a better term, and probably going to have to bleep this out, but shit went sideways for the NRL real quick, and many sports in general. How did you cope with that, and how did the Rabbitohs in general cope with that?
Yeah, I think like everyone, it was just chaotic. It's sort of no one's ever experienced it in all of society. So it was sort of, it was crazy to think going into round one, sort of, ScoMo was saying he was still going to go to the footy, and then
he was, and then
almost a week later, we played round two, and then all of a sudden the season was called off, and it was just come out of nowhere, and it was obviously a different time, and me and Perry, my wife, we were expecting a baby
the
late May, so we were sort of, she ended up coming a few weeks early May, but she came in sort of the middle of it all, and
congratulations, but that's brutal.
Yeah, it was. Well, as new parents, we sort of our prenatal classes got cancelled, and Perry's appointment started getting cancelled, and we sort of, we were a bit, I don't know, we went into the whole birthing process a bit naive.
Kind of blind a little bit as well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was a good thing or bad thing for us, but, it's, in the end, it turned out being a pretty good thing for us, because, we were sort of locked inside. So that those first month after Darcy was born, it was only sort of us three at home, and we got a lot of time to just spend with her, and we didn't have to worry about, it was obviously disappointing that family couldn't come see her and stuff like that, but it meant that we were able to get her in a routine. And,
exactly, yeah.
I guess the silver lining is we got to, it was just us, as selfish as that is, we got to...
No, it's by all means be selfish. You're a new dad, new parents, and that's what you want. And obviously a lot of NRL players and professional sports persons, when they do have kids, have to struggle with that, going to work every day and then playing, example, if you were to play over in New Zealand for a week, you'd be away for a week or two, and then you'd come home, whereas you were able to spend that whole first month, with her and with your wife and all that.
Yeah, well, she was actually born when we got the go-ahead to go back to training. She was born that week, so I missed that first week of preseason, and then we actually had a bit of a hiccup. So I missed that first week, and then the second week I went back, and I think I'd only done one session back. Might have been the second session that I was back, and I got home in the afternoon, and sort of Perry she was really weak, and she was really, really hot, and she sort of feeling really crook, and she sort of said, "Oh, look, I've rang my doctor. She said come up when you get home." And I drove up to the doctor, and at that stage we sort of weren't really allowed to do, we were only allowed to leave our house for training sort of thing. And so I sat in the car with the bub, and Perry went in, and she come straight out and said, the doctor said, take me straight up to emergency. And she said, she thinks I've got a really bad infection, and it's like come out of nowhere. It was really starting to get bad. So I rushed her straight up to hospital and didn't really think anything of it at the time. But the next morning, we have to fill out an app every morning and say, whether we have symptoms, whether anyone in the house has symptoms. Whether
and she was definitely displaying somewhat symptoms. Yeah,
well, she was sort of, she basically had an infection that had given her a fever, which is sort of one of the main indicators of COVID. So I filled out the app, not thinking too much of it. And then all of a sudden I had the doc ringing me, and the doc had the NRL ringing him, and they're sort of saying, what's going on? I said, I had to rush my wife up to hospital last night. And they were really worried that I'd maybe come into contact with someone at the hospital that could have gave me COVID. So I actually had to then go isolate for a week, and couldn't go back to training at all. I couldn't leave the house. So I had a sick wife up in hospital, and she was trying to still breastfeed. Obviously, at the start, it's really important for the baby to be breastfed, and I was had been told I wasn't allowed to leave the house. So
so you can even go see your wife at the hospital?
Yeah. So luckily, my mum, she was down at Wollongong, and she could take the time off work to come and help Perry with the baby and stay with her in hospital. And the club was really good. They organised a bike and some weights and stuff, so I could still train at home. And, but unfortunately for me, it meant that I missed 2 of those 3 weeks basically that we had to get ready for round 3, which was a bit of a setback for me personally. And it was just a chaotic time, but I completely understand why the NRL had to do what they did, and I think from their part they understood why I did what I did. But
for sure,
I guess the game, the safety of the bubble that we've created, and the game came first. And at that stage, we sort of weren't really allowed to do anything. So, and
obviously, it wasn't COVID either on your end or your wife's end, which is first of all the best turnout. And how's your wife doing now?
Yeah, she was fine after a couple of days in hospital. They
that's good.
Put her on drip and whatnot, and then gave her some stuff, antibiotics, to take a course of that to take when she came home, and the bub was fine. She didn't miss a beat, so
that's good.
In the end, it was all good.
That's hectic though. That's crazy ass, dude. Far out.
It was a crazy time. It was looking back now, I sort of can laugh at it, but at the time...
but at the time you were like, oh shit, do I have a job? What's going on?
Yeah.
Far out. But no, that was also really good that the Rabbitohs got, helped you and backed you, during your, for lack of a better term, ordeal, you could really say. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
So I had to get a couple of COVID tests, obviously to prove that I didn't have it. But once I got the all clear, I came back to training. But it was definitely a crazy time when it was all happening.
Oh, that's for sure. And given COVID and the rule changes and whatnot, what are your thoughts on the 6 again? And what are your thoughts on the 1 ref? Well, going back to 1 ref on the field now.
Yeah, I think they've been great changes for the spectacle of the game. I remember that first Thursday night. I think it was Para and someone else played on. Yeah, and the game was it just went from end to end. I think getting rid of those, the penalties just make it so stop-start. If you get 15 or 20 penalties in a game, it can get
you maybe get 45, maybe 60 minutes of footy if you had all those penalties. Yeah.
So I think, I think they've been great. I think it's just made it better for the punter at home watching the game. Just
for
seems
sure.
to flow a bit better.
I know. I can personally say that I was getting last year and the last few years. I'm not this year though, obviously. I've been a bit, I'd rather watch Super League, as in English rugby league, because it's a lot more flowing. And then now, obviously, with Volandis bringing the 6 again and the 1 ref, the flow. That's all. Honestly, I care about is the flow of the game, and it's so good. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, I 100% I agree. I think, I think we're just seeing, centers get the ball again.
It's great.
With a bit of space, which is
and
great.
Some of the and the forwards and props, such as yourself, are actually like running it up, and a lot of the centers, as you were saying, the centers and the wingers are taking the ball forwards and giving the forwards a bit of a break in a set of 6.
Yeah.
Like very reminiscent of like the Lottie Takiri days back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. No, I think they've been great changes for the game. I'm sure from what I've read and heard, I think most people can agree that it's definitely been a positive.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I don't see any negatives from it. Well, yet anyway, and touch wood, it doesn't happen. Now let's get to some questions about your career in particular. The coaches and some of the coaches that you've had. You've been with Bellyache at Melbourne. You've been with David Furner. And now you've got obviously Wayne Bennett, so 2 monumentally massive coaches, Bennett and Bellyache, and also David Furner in his own respect. Pardon me. Who? I've got to try and word this. Because all I wrote was coaches. I didn't write the exact question. What it is basically, which coaches, as in what has Bennett brought out of word vomit? What are the best traits that each coach has brought out of you, and which coach have you gelled with the most?
I think personally for me, I debuted under Dave, and then I spent a lot of years on the fringe. Ricky Stewart went down there, what's that, 2014 or something. So when he first came to the club, he sort of wanted his front rowers, big and running over blokes, powerful, and I sort of wasn't really that player, and I tried to be that player.
But it just didn't suit you, sort of thing?
Yeah, it just didn't suit my style. I'd always been a hard worker and probably more defensive based, where he'd sort of said, like, I want big front rows, run over the top of blokes, and I'd sort of try to do that. And then I went down to Melbourne, and it was probably when I went down to Melbourne that I realised, my strengths as a player. I sort of went down there, and it's a very professional setup, and they've got great coaching staff. Their development staff down there, their development coaches, they work just as hard on the blokes on the fringe. I think for years people keep commenting, Melbourne lose 3 or 4 genuine first graders every year, and they just get replaced.
Same with the Roosters. They don't have a team; they have a squad.
Yeah, and I think that's good coaching staff. And,
for
and
sure.
then when you develop that reputation, players are willing to go down there and develop. So for me personally, I'd sort of spent 5 years at Canberra and only played, I think by that stage it was 19 games or something.
I'll have a quick look. Yeah, 19 games. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was only sort of playing 3 or 4 games a year on average. And the opportunity come up to go down to Melbourne, and I was 25 at the time, and I thought, so many blokes have gone down there and turned into better football players. Maybe, I guess at the time it was an easy decision for me, because I thought it seems to work for everyone else. Maybe I should go down there and see what happens. And part of it was going down there and understanding, my strengths as a football player, and knowing that I didn't have to be a big I didn't have to be a Junior Paulo or a Shannon Boyd or those guys that were getting a run ahead of me at Canberra. I could be a defensive player. I could work hard. I could be the player that I was, and that was good enough to get picked in an NRL side. And that was one of Craig's big things was, whenever I played for Melbourne, he always said the same thing. He said, just when you're out on the field, no one works harder than you. That's the player you are. And then I think going to South, that sort of gave me the confidence that, that was the player I was. And when I first came to South, Anthony Seabar was sort of the coach, and he was a bit the same. He sort of said, we've got big blokes that run over guys in the front row. We don't need any more of them. We need guys that are going to work hard defensively and sort of find their front in attack and get through a lot of work, because that complements those bigger guys.
Yeah, it does. It makes both you, the defensive forward, and the attacking forward jobs easier on each other. You complement each other's game and style by doing your jobs, sort of thing.
Exactly. So I guess that helped me going from Melbourne to South. But I love Wayne. He's been great. It's
the Wayne Bennett effect, is what they say.
Yeah, because I had nothing to do with Wayne until he came to South, and I remember, every sort of interview you watch of players, they all say the same thing.
I've interviewed plenty of players who've been under him at the Dragons, at the Knights, at the Broncos, and they've even when he coached New Zealand and stuff, and they all say, he's second to none. Sorry, continue. Yeah,
it's funny. He genuinely cares about every player. This is not a dig at other coaches or other
no, of course not. No
players or managers or anything. But someone will say, "Get 80 in the morning. How's your day? How's your week been?" or whatever, and you sort of just you make chit chat, and you do that with you see 30 blokes when you walk into a change room in the morning, so you can't have a genuine conversation with everyone. But Wayne might only have one conversation with you a week, but then he remembers it 4 or 5 weeks later. Like I still remember one of the first convos I had with him. He'd asked me what I'd done on the weekend, and I said, I made the mistake of going to Westfields with my partner Perry, because I said, I wanted to get whatever it was, and being a bloke, I went into the first shop and got what I wanted, and then I ended up being dragged around to every second shop in the Westfields, and my lovely partner Perry, she sort of wanted to have a look at every second store, and I said something to Wayne, and he made a joke about, you got to be better than that, mate, And then 5 weeks later, it was a Monday, and he sort of said, how'd you go on the weekend? I hope you didn't go to Westfields. And I had no idea what he was talking about.
And but you remembered though, yeah.
Yeah, I sort of said, no, I didn't. And it didn't hit me until 10 minutes later. I was like, I told him that story, 5 or 6 weeks ago. How does he even remember? But that's the kind of person that he is. He genuinely does. He might only have a conversation with you once every 2 weeks, but he remembers it, and he genuinely cares about his players. And I think his whole philosophy on footy and coaching is if players are happy off the field, then they're going to perform on the field. And I think that's,
for sure.
I think that's where he's almost a father figure.
Almost a lot, if not everyone, says that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's his greatest strength, and it's obviously why players just love playing for him.
They gravitate towards him. Yeah, he's very similar, like how you said, players will 100% go and play for Melbourne, because of their system and whatnot, will just as easily go and play for Bennett no matter what team he's coaching, because of it's Wayne Bennett sort of thing. Yeah,
exactly. And it's funny. You sort of before I'd met him, he puts out the different persona in the media. I think in his later years he started to have a joke, but he seems so cranky in that in the media. But he's completely different.
I've met him a few times. He's a lovely bloke. Anyone who sees him in the media, definitely he's not that. He just, in my opinion, and I totally respect the way he handled the media the other week with Latrell. And honestly, that's how it should be. He's always been like that with the media. And I think he handles it so well. So then the Rabbitohs and any team that he coaches, because he's always been like that regardless, so that he doesn't, get... sorry, there's a thing going on with 2 dogs at the bloody top of my street. Sorry. Anyway, so how he handled the media the other week with Latrell is how he's always handled the media, and I think it's wonderful. He's definitely not that person, but if he is being that person in the media, it allows for the team that he's coaching at the time to have a lot more of a relaxed, atmosphere. Not necessarily relaxed is the better word, but a less media pressure, hype around the team throughout the week, so they can get the job done, sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's obviously been around a long time now, Wayne, and he's experienced campaigner when it comes to the media. And if I'm, what he did the other week, if I'm Latrell Mitchell, then I love him for what he did. And I think that was just his experience coming out.
His experience and his, for lack of a better term, father side of things, his care
for his players.
Yeah, for sure.
That's his number one priority, and that was on display right there.
And honestly, I think it's wonderful. Now, some fun questions. Who's the jokester of the team at the Rabbitohs?
Oh, the jokester. I think, Renault's obviously a pest. Cody Walker's definitely another one who's a bit of a pest. But yeah, I don't know who. Top of my head, I can't even think who I'd say would be the funniest bloke. But they're two guys that you definitely try and avoid.
Fair enough. Okay, then who's the one that is the most talkative at the club?
Oh,
as in Mr. Have a Chat, loves having a chinwag,
Kurt Dillon's a guy that I love having a chat to. He always seems to be pretty interesting. I think Cam Murray and Damien Cook, they're good for a chat, but I think they've got a bit too much money for me after some of the things they talk about. But yeah, no, all the blokes, all the boys are great. It's the best thing about being a football player is you get to go to work with 30 of your mates. We've all had sort of similar upbringings. We're all sort of we're all sort of working class guys. Our families have worked hard, and we've had to work hard to get where we are. And
yeah, for sure.
We all just love playing footy, and it's the best thing about being a footy player is you get to come in and spend the day with 30.
You get to train and play footy and get paid for it with your mates.
Yeah, exactly. I tell people all the time I'd still be playing local footy. I've always loved footy and always played it. I'd be playing local footy now if I wasn't playing NRL. And so, like you said, the best thing is I get paid for it.
Yeah. And speaking of footy and park footy as a kid, what team did you follow growing up?
Dad and my mum and dad will always. They've got a few photos of me wearing, all kinds of jerseys growing up. But when I was about 8, I was 8. The Melbourne Storm came into the competition. I can't even remember now why. I think one of the players that went down there was, might have been my favourite player at the time. But I sort of just said, I go for the Storm now. And in 1999, my dad is a mad Dragons fan.
Oh,
and,
yep.
And we growing up in Leeton. By that stage, I don't think I'd even been to Sydney. And Dad being a mad Dragons fan, he wanted to go to that grand final, so he bought 2 tickets, and we went to the game. And I was 9 years old at that stage. I had me Melbourne jersey and my Melbourne flag, and Dad tells this story all the time. At half time, I'd taken the jersey off and I put my flag under the chair, and I was actually begging Dad to go home. I'd had enough, and Dad was loving it. He was going, "No, I want to stay. I'm going to see the Dragons win the grand final for the first time in years." And he's thinking, "There's no way I'm taking you home, son." And then, obviously Melbourne started coming back. I put the jersey back on and started waving the flag around and being that annoying kid.
Yep.
And then, from that day on, I was hooked as a Storm supporter. And I was at that age, 8 or 9, where you sort of pick a team and you work out that you're meant to pick and stick. So
and so you picked and you stuck.
Yeah. And then it was pretty funny. Like, as a sort of 13, 14-year-old, I was pretty rugby league mad. Like, my my nan and pop sort of lived 5 k's away from us, and back then Melbourne used to always get the 2:30 Saturday game on Fox, and I used to ride my bike out every week to go watch them play. And
Oh, wow.
it was at that point that Billy sort of started playing, and Cooper and Cameron, and then it was a bit of a surreal moment 10 years later to sort of
pulling on the boots with them,
yeah, get a chance to play with them. I sort of, it was crazy. I had to think back, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was watching these guys debut on TV, and now I'm getting to play with them, and they're obviously, by that stage, they were greats of the game.
Yeah, that's insane, because I too was footy mad, My dad would always go to work, and he'd collect the packets of chips, Tarzos, from his workmates and bring them home for me. I'd go to school, me and my mates would trade, this, that, the other. Oh, they'd give me a ribbing because I'm a Broncos fan. I was born in Brizzy. So obviously they're not going too well this year, but they weren't doing too crash hot from like 2007 onwards, but all my friends gave me hell. And so one of my friends is a devout Storm fan, and I went to the 06 grand final with my dad, very similar to yourself with the 99 grand final. My dad was like, we're getting 2 tickets. We went, and it was amazing. Obviously, if you're a Broncos fan, it wasn't if you're a Melbourne fan. But literally, my friend didn't go to the game though, but the week later I went to school and I was like, hey mate, so how'd Melbourne go in the grand final? And he was just like, shut up.
It's that passion for the sport. It's a great thing.
It's so wonderful. It brings so many people together. Let's go for a few more fun ones. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
I don't know. I think it'd be pretty cool to be able to sort of fly or teleport.
With COVID going on, it definitely would be. As in, because you wouldn't have to pay the prices of the flights or anything. Yeah, I don't know. Something like that. Pretty cool. Super strength, maybe. That'd help me as a footy player. Yeah, that's true. Oh, you wouldn't want to drop the shoulder into anyone if you had super strength.
Yeah, you have to just go at 10% and still,
and still
tumble over.
10% and you'd be JT. Yeah. Oh, far out.
That'd be great, actually.
Pardon?
That'd be great, actually.
That would be pretty great. Who was your league idol when you were growing up? Like, obviously, you mentioned Cameron Smith and Billy Slater. Were they always your idols, or did you have someone before you started following Melbourne that you sort of was which player when you were growing up made you realise I want to do that, as sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it was funny. I remember in school at one stage we had to sort of do a speech on our favourite person in the world, and I did it on Robbie Ross, who was the fullback in Melbourne at the time.
Yep.
And then obviously Billy started playing, so I don't know why I was
fullback.
I love fullbacks because I've always played in the forwards, but I guess to sort of at that age where I sort of wanted to become an NRL first grader, I remember sort of watching Ryan Hoffman and Nathan Hindmarsh and guys like that start to play first grade and State of Origin, and they were sort of players that I was, as a 15, 16-year-old, they were sort of players that I played like, and they were the guys I sort of looked up to, I guess, as maybe they're sort of guys I could emulate. But it could, because coming through the grades, I was always an edge back rower, but it wasn't until I sort of started playing reserve grade just before I debuted that I sort of transferred into the front row. So they were sort of guys that I was like, I wouldn't mind being like them.
Yeah, no, that's fair. During your time in the NRL, so far, which team has been the toughest to go up against physically, and which team has been the toughest to go up against mentally for you?
Oh, I'm not too sure. I mean, the obvious ones there are obviously sort of Melbourne and the Roosters. Just they've been so good for so long. The Roosters sort of lately have been great. I guess as a South Sydney player, they're always big clashes, but I guess they're always the games that are easy to get up for because the rivalry's there
Yeah.
and how good they are. So if you're not up, then they're gonna hurt you. And Melbourne are just so clinical. I guess you just know that they're going to turn up every week. So you sort of have to be on your game. So probably they're obviously the obvious choices, but
Yep.
they're two great teams for the last 5, 10, 15.
I was
Melbourne
gonna say,
have been doing it for ages.
They've been doing it pretty much since they started, really. They've never not had a bad season since 98.
Yeah.
Like 98,
well,
they made the prelim, I think, in 98, and then they won it the next year.
Yeah, and there's something. I don't think they've ever missed the finals under Craig or something now.
No, they haven't.
3 or 4 or whatever it is. So it's amazing. But having been down there, it does not surprise me because it's a very professionally run club from the top to the bottom. And they have a work ethic that's second to none. I remember when I went from Canberra to Melbourne and I started training, it was almost like when I'd gone from 20s to first grade at Canberra. It just seemed that the skill of the players was better. It seemed like the intensity of training was just that little bit better. And that we'd sort of, at Canberra at that time, we'd sort of been a side that would make the top 8 one year and then sort of not make it the next and make it the top 8 the next year and sort of then we'd drop out again. And going down there, they'd been sort of always in the top 4.
And one of the years you played, they made the grand final,
Yeah, well, no, so both years. They made
they made it, sorry.
2016, they made it and lost to Cronulla, and then 2017, I was lucky enough to play sort of through that middle of the year in that origin period and then watch the boys go on and win it. And, that was sort of obviously, even though I didn't play, I wasn't really part of the game day squad. It was a great experience, especially because I'd been the year before and saw the boys lose. So it was great to see the boys win. And at that stage, I knew I was leaving, so it was a great way to sort of end my time at the club.
Yeah, for sure. I guess there's only a few more questions left that I've got typed up. First of all, what job do you think you'd be doing if you hadn't have cracked it in the first grade?
Oh, I don't know. I actually, I went to university when I was at Canberra. I was sort of at that stage, I'd finished school and was only playing SG ball.
Yep.
And sorry, I'd got a junior contract for sort of 3 years as I ended year 12, and I decided that if I was going to stick around Canberra, then I'd do something useful and sort of got a university degree, and I sort of went into sports science thinking that I'd do strength and conditioning after if footy didn't pan out that way. But I just by chance I had the good enough marks to do a double degree and do sports management as well. And
oh wow.
I actually enjoyed that side of the degree more. And then I sort of worked out how hard the strength and conditioners work and the hours and sort of, it's
you're like,
most weekends of all of winter and, sort of all these summers taken as well. And I sort of thought, these guys work too hard for me. But
yeah.
I think now that I've sort of, I'd actually finished the degree the year I debuted, and I sort of thought, now I'm going to play NRL, and I'm going to have a university degree. I'll be a slam dunk to get a job in the sports industry when I eventually retire. But it was funny in 2017 when Melbourne had sort of told me that they didn't have a spot for me the next year. I actually struggled to pick up another contract for about 3 months, and by that stage I'd started applying for a few jobs, and like I said, I thought, if I've got a degree and I've played first grade, I'll be a slam dunk. And I actually started a few jobs that I did apply for. I started getting feedback that I had no experience.
Oh,
which is funny, but because I was thinking, well, how am I going to get experience? I've been trying to play NRL, but it was a blessing in disguise because I picked up the South Sydney deal, sort of late in the piece, and by that stage, I'd been knocked back from a few jobs. So I spoke to my partner and we said, oh, well, let's go give it one last crack. You know, who knows what might happen. And when I did come to the club, I went and spoke to the welfare guys and said, you know, this is what's happened to me in the last few months. I'd love to get some experience working at this club. If this is going to be my last 12 months in the NRL, I want to be able to get a job afterwards.
Yeah.
And the club was really good. I sort of showed me the other side of the football, of a football club, and let me work, you know, on my days off in the commercial team. And
yeah, wow.
You know, they've got obviously, you know, they're a well-run club. They've got a lot of members, and most years they turn a profit. And it was great to see how those guys work. And it was actually, you know, I actually ended up through doing word of mouth and doing a good job in there. I got offered a business development role part time,
wow.
which I'm doing now, and you know, I've been able to get a second income, which has been really good for me, and helping me set up, I guess, you know, my post footy options.
Yeah, because
I remember talking to Adam Woolnough, who was at the East Tigers. He was a forwards coach up there, and Melbourne are obviously have an affiliation with them. So I was going up there when Melbourne had sort of said, we don't have a spot for you, and he was saying that he sort of didn't really do much towards the end of his career, and you know, one day he woke up and he was retired and he didn't know what he was going to do, and the only job that he could get that you know, was going to pay similar to footy was going to work in the mines. And he said he did that for a couple of years, and he was like, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I think now he's doing a bit of welfare stuff with athletes, and I think he might be with the Queensland Institute of Sport up there. But you know, that sort of getting that advice and being in that position that I was in sort of made me, you know, I guess, a bit more smarter with what I was doing with my time away from footy. And it's funny, I've actually started playing. The best footy I've played in my career has been at South, and I've had something to do on my time off. So it's funny if people say that, you know, if you're happy off the field and you're doing stuff away from footy, it's beneficial.
Then your form will be good, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it definitely has.
Well, I mean, the proof's in the pudding, mate. Like, you've played 40 games for the Bunnies, which is twice as many games as you played with your other clubs in general in just a short span of 2 years, you know, being at the Bunnies, which definitely, there's definitely some truth to that saying, 100%. And honestly, mate, congrats on, you know, getting that, you know, and figuring that out, because as you said, a lot of players, when they retire, they don't have a backup plan. Like, a lot of them do, don't get me wrong, but there are also a lot of ones that, you know, either have only just set the wheels in motion, like towards the last few months of their career, or like with Adam Warner, like they go a few years and, you know, working as a labourer or doing whatever because they don't, you know, they didn't really set up a pathways for themselves into retirement. So it's good.
Yeah,
good to hear that you're doing that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's, it's one of those things that, you know, we definitely, as footballers in general, do get paid well, and you hope that the guys that do get those big contracts, you know, are smart with their money and set themselves up for life after footy. But, you know, there's also a lot of guys that are sort of on the fringe and getting paid okay money, but they're sort of, you know, they're not getting those big $1 million or $500,000 contracts that people see in the paper. I think I don't know if you've seen it, but Isaac John did a video the other week, and he said that 45% of the NRL are on 150 grand or less.
100%
you know, so it is important for those guys to sort of use their time, and you know, I think at South Sydney, they've got so many great sponsors and great contacts that want to help players out. You know, and if players do have a passion, it's an easy sort of get your foot in the door, and if you do a good job, you know, like it's funny. It's probably something, you know, as a young guy, I don't think you take it for granted, but you're just enjoying the ride, the NRL sort of journey, and it's, you know, as you get older, I think it's you've got a great opportunity to use your club and the contacts to sort of just get your foot in the door at some organisations and get a good name for yourself and help yourself out post footy, especially, as I said, for those guys that don't get paid the real big dollars of some other guys. And I think that helps that transition, because you probably you're not going to have the name of a state of origin player or an Australian player to fall back on.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, honestly, you really hit the nail on the head with that one. One last question / talking point, really, is what advice do you have for any youngsters, and in particular coming from country areas like CRL sort of type, would you give to them who are aspiring and hoping to make it in like the big rugby league or any professional sport, really, in general?
I think definitely the big word I take out of my journey is perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
I tell this story all the time. When we were one of the first weekends as a squad when I was at the Harold Mats in Canberra. So
yep.
We were all 15-year-old guys. It was a couple of weeks before Christmas, and there was probably at that stage 30 or 35 blokes in the squad, and they called all the parents in to come in this Saturday morning before we trained, and they basically said, as a club, the Canberra Raiders had a pretty good strike rate of turning sort of junior development players into first graders, and they said we're sort of running at about 7 or 8% at the moment. So they sort of said, look around this room, there's only going to be 2 or 3 guys in this room go on to play first grade. I remember at the time looking around and thinking, well, there's 15 guys in here that are better than me, so what chance do I have? But I think a lot of guys at 14 and 15, there's still, you see it all the time, like some guys don't hit their peak till 25, and if you've got that dream and you're willing to do the hard work, you never know when things might happen for you. And like we've spoken about, I think it's 28 games in my first 7 seasons in a first grade squad, and there was definitely times I thought about giving up, but at the end of the day, I love playing footy and I love what I do, and I kept coming back to the fact that I've worked too hard to just give up, and if there's a team out there that's willing to give me a crack, I'm going to have a go. And luckily enough for me, I found a bit of a home at South Sydney. But yeah, for any, especially being a country guy, it's obviously going to be harder to be seen, and you've got to make that big move. Unless you go to Canberra like I did, you've got to make the move to the big smoke. And you've just got to persevere. And if you've got that dream and you want to play first grade, then you just never know when it might happen for you.
Well, for sure, and proof's in the pudding with yourself. You as you were mentioning, they don't really, some blokes don't hit their peak until 22, 25, sort of thing, whereas some hit their peak 14, 15, some 19. Like one of my mates who I went to school with, Matt Kavalu, he plays at the Roosters. He didn't get his first grade debut until 2 years ago when he was 25. And that's just how it is. People get picked and hit their peak soon. People don't. But yeah, honestly, thank you for that advice to any youngsters that are listening, because I do know, parents listen to it and they have kids and whatnot. But yeah, so thank you very much for your time. And I'll definitely get you on at the end of the season for like a Rabbitohs recap about how you thought your season went and how the team went as a whole, sort of thing.
Yeah, sounds great, mate. Thanks for having me and giving me